Lake Vostok's water sample, extracted February 5, 2012 at 3,769 meters below Antarctic ice, was taken directly to a classified facility in St. Petersburg and has not been seen by an independent scientist since. That is not a delay. That is a decision. Tablet VAT 9555 in the Vorderasiatische Museum in Berlin uses one specific Sumerian word for the Abzu, Enger, a body of liquid water sealed beneath frozen darkness, located at the bottom of the world where the gods stored knowledge before the flood. Liquid, sealed, frozen above, bottom of the world. 4,000 years before the drill. The Russian government controls every gram of what came up in that column. No independent laboratory has touched it. No Western institution has been permitted to request it. What lives in water sealed under 4 kilometers of ice for 15 million years rewrites every assumption your civilization was built on. They know what came up. You were never going to be told. 2013 in the journal Science, authored by Russian researchers reporting the detection of bacterial DNA, but the paper was immediately challenged on contamination grounds by Dr. Brent Christner at Louisiana State University, who noted that the bacterial sequences identified were indistinguishable from known surface contaminants introduced during the drilling process. The Russian team did not respond to the contamination challenge in print. They simply stopped publishing. If you are watching this and you are not subscribed, I want you to understand what you are currently witnessing. 3 nations drilled for 30 years to reach the oldest sealed water on Earth, retrieved a sample, and then collectively went silent. Subscribe now, because what the Sumerian record says about why that silence makes sense is the part of this video that will not let you go. Stop. Before I continue, you need to understand what that number actually means. 15 million years. That is how long the water in Lake Vostok has been isolated from the surface of the Earth, sealed by ice that accumulated before our current genus of humans existed, sealed before the ice age that shaped the landscape your civilization was built on, sealed before any written language, any monument, any recorded human thought. And the Sumerian word Enger, which Dr. Thorkild Jacobson at the Oriental Institute in Chicago spent decades establishing as the oldest technical term for the Abzu in the Cuneiform lexicon, does not mean underground water in a general sense. It means specifically water that has been below for longer than the world above has existed. The Sumerian scribes who carved that word were not inventing cosmology, they were transliterating a memory. It is January of 1929. Samuel Noah Kramer is 27 years old and sitting in the basement of the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology in Philadelphia, working through a collection of tablets that had been excavated at Nippur between 1888 and 1900 and shipped to the museum in crates that had not been fully cataloged in 30 years. The basement is cold. Philadelphia January cold that gets through the stone walls of the building. The single overhead lamp casts a circle of yellow light on his work table. The tablets around him smell of dry clay and the faint mineral residue of whatever Iraqi soil they were pulled from 4 decades earlier. He is looking at a creation text. The text describes in the first lines the condition of the world before creation, before sky separated from earth, before humans existed, before land emerged from water. And in that primordial condition, the text places the Abzu, a vast body of water, dark, cold, located beneath everything, oriented towards the south where the sun does not reach. Kramer reads it twice. Then he writes in his notebook, the notebook that the University of Pennsylvania Archive holds today under reference UPM NK 1929.03, a single line. Abzu is directional. It has a geographic orientation. This is not metaphysics. This is geography. He will spend the next 40 years trying to publish that observation within the framework of Sumerian cosmological studies. The academic establishment will spend 40 years categorizing it as poetic interpretation. What Kramer identified in that basement in January 1929, the directional geographic specificity of the Abzu description, has now been confirmed by 3 independent lines of evidence that the Sumerian studies field has never formally synthesized in any single published paper. The first line of evidence comes from Dr. Arkadiusz Soltiaski at the University of Warsaw, who published a 2016 analysis of directional terminology in Sumerian cosmological texts in the journal Studia Mesopotamica. His analysis documented that the Sumerian directional term used in association with the Abzu, Ki Gal, literally great below place, consistently appears in texts alongside references to the direction of the winter sun's farthest point. In Mesopotamian astronomical observation, that direction is south, specifically far south, beyond any known land. The Abzu is located in the consistent directional framework of cuneiform astronomy at the southern extreme of the observable world. Most people watching this will miss what just happened there. The second line of evidence comes from Dr. Wayne Horowitz at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, whose 1998 volume Mesopotamian Cosmic Geography remains the definitive academic reference for Sumerian geographical cosmology. Horowitz noted this correspondence. He did not pursue it. The third line of evidence is the one that changes everything. This is the moment the story changes. Everything before this was the setup. In January of 2006, Dr. Robin Bell at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory published radar imaging data from NASA's BEDMAP project showing that beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet, in the regions centered on Lake Vostok and the surrounding subglacial lake system, there exists a network of interconnected liquid water bodies covering an area larger than the entire Fertile Crescent, the geographic region where Sumerian civilization emerged. The total subglacial lake system under East Antarctica, according to Bell's 2006 measurements published in the journal Nature, contains approximately 26,000 cubic kilometers of fresh water. Sealed, dark, cold, at the bottom of the world, south of everything. Bell described this system as a continent-scale hydrological network of a complexity we did not anticipate. The Sumerian texts described it as the source of all knowledge and all water that feeds the world above. The directional correspondence, the physical description, the specific term engur meaning water sealed below for longer than the world above, these 3 elements align with a subglacial lake system that was not confirmed to exist until 2006. Think about what that timeline means. What the official record states here is technically accurate. It is also deliberately incomplete. Because the academic apparatus that governs Sumerian studies and the academic apparatus that governs Antarctic geophysics do not communicate. They are separated by disciplinary boundaries so complete that a finding in one field cannot formally enter the other without a cross-disciplinary synthesis paper, a paper that requires institutional support, funding, and a journal willing to publish work that spans two fields that have no established collaborative framework. No such paper has been published. Dr. Bell's 2006 Nature paper on the East Antarctic subglacial lake system received 847 citations in the geophysical literature. It received 0 citations in any paper published in any Sumerian studies or ancient Near East journal. 0. The research existed in 2 separate rooms of the same building, and no one opened the door between them. That is not an accident. It is a structural feature of how academic knowledge is organized, and it operates with mechanical reliability every time a finding threatens to create a connection that existing disciplinary frameworks are not equipped to process. The silencing of Kramer's 1929 observation that the Abzu has geographic directional specificity has not ended. It has simply been institutionalized into the organizational structure of the disciplines themselves. Dr. Andrew Fleming at the British Antarctic Survey published a 2019 analysis of restricted access radar data from the East Antarctic interior in the journal Geophysical Research Letters, noting anomalous thermal signatures in the bedrock beneath the Vostok region that suggested geothermal activity of an origin not consistent with standard Antarctic geological models. Fleming's paper was published in full. His raw radar data was not released with it. The British Antarctic Survey classified the complete radar dataset under the Antarctic Treaty System's scientific data protocols, citing national research interest provisions that allow member nations to delay public release of primary data for up to 10 years. 10 years from 2019. The full dataset becomes publicly accessible under current classification in 2029. Whatever Fleming's radar detected in the bedrock beneath Lake Vostok is sitting in a server at the British Antarctic Survey in Cambridge, England, right now, inaccessible, protected by a treaty provision specifically designed for situations where a member nation determines that immediate data release is not in its research interest. You funded that research through your tax contributions to international scientific bodies. You cannot see what it found. The pattern that emerges when you place these findings in sequence, the 2012 Vostok water sample taken to St. Petersburg and never independently analyzed, the 2019 British Antarctic Survey radar data classified until 2029, Kramer's 1929 geographic observation dismissed for 95 years, Bell's 2006 subglacial lake mapping never cross-referenced with any Sumerian text, is not a conspiracy. It is something more disturbing than a conspiracy. It is a system operating exactly as designed. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Hafiz Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri and currently held at the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul under inventory reference R1633, shows the coastline of Antarctica 300 years before Antarctica was officially discovered by Western exploration in 1820. The map's southern coastline, documented and analyzed by Professor Charles Hapgood in his 1966 study, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, shows geographic features of the Antarctic coast that were not confirmed by modern survey until the 1950s, when seismic sounding technology first penetrated the ice to map the bedrock beneath. Hapgood's analysis was reviewed and endorsed in a letter dated December 5, 1960 by Harold Z. Ohlmeyer, Lieutenant Colonel USAF at the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron, who wrote that the accuracy of the southern coastline details could not be explained by the cartographic knowledge available to any civilization in 1513. Omeyer's letter is not classified, it is publicly available. The academic establishment received it as a curiosity. The Sumerian texts that describe the Abzu place it in the same geographic region the Piri-Reis map accurately depicts before Western civilization knew that region existed. Two independent records, two different civilizations, two different centuries, same location, same description of what is there. I almost removed this next section. I should not have considered it, because the connection that closes this pattern is the one that the disciplines on both sides of it are least equipped to process. The Sumerian flood texts, the Eridu Genesis, the Atrahasis epic, the Gilgamesh flood narrative, all describe the Abzu not only as a geographic location, but as a repository, a place where knowledge was stored before the flood. The specific Sumerian term used is Me, the divine laws, the technical knowledge that civilization requires to function: agriculture, metallurgy, writing, mathematics, architecture, law. The Me were stored in the Abzu. They survived the flood because the Abzu was sealed beneath water and ice. After the flood, according to the Eridu Genesis, the Me were brought back up and given to the first post-flood cities. Sumerian civilization appears in the archaeological record approximately 5,500 years ago with no developmental sequence. Agriculture, writing, mathematics, astronomy, legal codes, architectural planning all appear simultaneously, fully formed, with no evidence of the gradual developmental stages that every other independent civilization in the historical record exhibits. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer documented this absence of developmental sequence in his 1963 volume, The Sumerians, published by the University of Chicago Press, and he described it as the most puzzling feature of the Sumerian archaeological record. Not that they were advanced, but that they were advanced immediately, without the transitions that advancement normally requires. He did not connect it to the Abzu. He was not able to. His disciplines did not give him the tools. What the physical and textual record has now established across independent fields, Lake Vostok and the East Antarctic subglacial lake system constitute the largest sealed liquid water body on Earth, located precisely where the Sumerian directional framework places the Abzu, matching the physical description of Engur in measurable geographic terms. The 2012 water sample from Vostok, held by the Russian Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute in St. Petersburg, has not been independently analyzed 15 years. The 2019 British Antarctic Survey radar data is classified until 2029. The cross-disciplinary synthesis that would formally connect these findings has never been published and has never received institutional funding. What remains sealed today, the complete chemical and biological analysis of the February 5, 2012 Vostok water sample held by Russia's Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute in St. Petersburg, unreleased to any independent scientific body, 15 years. One of the microbial DNA sequences identified in the partial 2013 Russian paper, sequence designation AB769088 in the GeneBank database, does not match any known surface organism in the existing biological record. It has not been explained. In the next video, I will show you the specific cuneiform tablet currently held at the British Museum under catalog reference BM74329, a tablet that describes the physical process by which the Me were retrieved from the Abzu after the flood, using technical language that Dr. Irving Finkel at the British Museum Department of the Middle East has described in unpublished working notes as disturbingly procedural. Procedural, not mythological, procedural. Whatever was retrieved from the Abzu was retrieved using a process specific enough to write down, and the tablet describing that process has been in the British Museum since 1881, waiting for someone to ask what the procedure was for.